was love from the start, from long ago. We were gathering stars while a million guitars played our love song. Darling, you are the one, and you'll always belong to my heart.
Yay. You're the first person that I've ever said it to that actually sang. And that's okay. That's okay. Tell me about the ammunition dump, being one of your most frightful experiences.
Ammunition dump. All right, we're ready to roll. All right.
You got that solo on your tape.
You did get it on there. Okay, the 26th of April, 25th of April in 1945, the sergeant of the guard came around waking everybody up at about 30 minutes before midnight. This is the 25th of April, 45. And then on the 26th was most of the activity, because there's about 20 of us that went to the south. We went towards Suribachi from where we were bivouacked in no, we'd come up out of the foxholes by that time. We'd been in the foxholes 6 weeks, and we were in tents, 16 square feet preamble tents, and had sandbags up about 2 feet 30 inches, something like that. And we still had the ash for the floor, except for some of us. We had sequestered enough wood to sort of make us a little floor on the ground. But anyway, we moved out about probably a couple hundred feet. About 20 of us did from headquarters squadron to a big rock that probably 30 or 40 people could hide behind. It was between us and ammunition dump. And this dump started going off small arms to begin with. Well, what actually happened is, in order to protect their areas, they had put up a tripwire. And that tripwire was armed during the night. And of course you could see it during the day, and you respected you could step over it. But an animal out there or a person, you couldn't see it even partly with a flashlight at night. The tripwire did send up I believe it was a little phosphor bomb that had a parachute on it. It'd come down real slow, and it would really light up, just make it look like daylight. So you could see anything in the area of where that flare was tripped and shot up in the air. Well, something happened, a dog or some kind of animal, and it amazes me if a dog survived on Iwo Jima. It had to be in a cave probably with some of the Japanese. But anyway, supposedly an animal tripped the trip flare, and it went into a storage area near the 302nd. They were out a little farther from Suribachi, where they had put up their tents, where they had been in the foxholes and put up their tents. And they were closer to the ammunition dump. It was on the east side of the island. And then there were bulldozers had dug out trenches, and there were several of them, perpendicular to the water, to the beach front. And it was up a ways from the water so that in typhoon, water wouldn't get up there. And I don't remember how long this, probably 100, 200 feet more long each one of them was, and this ammo was just stacked in there. And so there's about 20 or 25 of us got behind this big rock, and the others went other places in all directions and to get away. Some of the 302nd Fighter Control Squadron, they went all the way to the other side of the island to get away from it, finally. And so we'd been there for a few minutes behind this rock, and there was a rocket of some kind that was probably about 3 feet long, and it started spinning. It hit the ground just a few feet from us, come over that rock, hit the ground, and was going round and around with sparks flying from it like a Roman candle. And it never did explode, thank goodness. And you talk about eating dirt, we ate dirt, and we got out of there quick. Well, going away from that, the road that was cut up, had been already cut up to go up Mount Suribachi, had to do switchbacks, and when they made a pretty sharp curve, and there's a big embankment, then it would be between you and the ammo dump. So a lot of us got up there and got behind that, and we had pretty good protection unless something just come right in on us, you know. And we were there till about 2 o'clock, and I think one of the colonels that had written the history of the 302nd, he uses a different time. So some of us have different concepts of time, and I had written it down in my notes as about 2 o'clock. Of course, my watch could have even been stopped. Who knows? The conflict in time, or his could have been fast. But anyway, he thinks it was about 3:30, but according to my notes, it's about 2 o'clock in the morning. And I thought it was 132, but I probably got the 132 casualties mixed up with that number when I put it in my notes in the Banzai raid, because they were close together. And he said there's 148 500-pound bombs went off at one time. And if you ever imagine the world coming to an end violently, that was it. Huge stones rolled out of Mount Suribachi, coming toward us. We happened to be far enough away that I don't think anybody was hit with rocks. But we thought the mountain was going to fall down. And everybody, there's a fellow in the 302nd Fighter Control Squadron that I guess was a reunion we had down in '99 down in San Antonio, Texas. He had written a story in a book, and I hope to get one of those one of these days on that night, about that night. And he described it very well, what had happened, the worst night. And I can imagine there's many people on that end of the island who describe this, even with air raids and all this thing happening. And speaking of air raids, we used some of the Japanese pillboxes for air raid shelters, and others, of course, made their own air raid shelters. And invariably, those people who smoked would light up a cigarette, whatever time of night they come in. And you can see a cigarette up 10,000 feet. There's a target, 10,000 feet, and you had to jump on, and somebody next to you lit up a cigarette and said, "Put it out." You know, it's just automatic with a lot of people to do this. But back to the ammo dump. I think there's one officer was killed in the 7th Fighter Command, and I do have some pictures of one of those things spiraling through the air that somebody took. Showing that thing was going off. But nobody in the 302nd, and this is the 302nd Fighter Control Squadron, and they've had several reunions. I've missed a couple of them now because they're having one about now, I think, down in San Antonio. And but I bet it was one 1998 in Pittsburgh. It was the first one that any great numbers had been to. And there's then 99 down in San Antonio, and 2000, I guess they had it in San Antonio again. In 2001, they had it in Daytona. And so we went to the one, we've been to 3 of them so far. And then this was in San Antonio again. But there's fewer and fewer people showing up at these things. Our first one in Pittsburgh, there's probably 30 or 40 people there. I mean, of the GIs, veterans were there. And of course, there's a lot more people than that because wives and grandchildren and other people had come to either drive or just to come along. And so one of the things that the leader had us do at that time is telling the story was to let each one tell his own story. Don't try to correct him on the times, if that's the way he saw it. Let him, don't try to correct anybody else on where they saw it. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing. Some can remember in detail. Some took notes and wrote it down later. Some doesn't remember anything. And I think whoever I talked to here on this and over the telephone, I said, what you really need is a Marine that was at Iwo Jima, that was in the heat of battle, to really describe this thing for you. But you know what? there's probably not that many of them that survived. It was in that much heat. Or they were so scared they can't remember, scared out of them, they can't remember. It's a lot of things that happened because it was a literal hell. And there's one of the kids, I talked to elementary schools, one of the kids asked me if I was afraid. I said, sure you're afraid. You can't help but be afraid, but you can't live like that. Right. That we even had fun. We had fun things that happened. In fact, while we were still in the foxholes, there was a young fellow from Boston, Massachusetts, that he's a little older than me, but he's a city boy, and apparently had never learned to do the ordinary things that most of us country boys is second nature to us. He didn't seem to know how to do a lot of things. So they had trying to figure out some assignments for him, and so when we started getting our airplanes in the air, we set up our mimeograph machine and our files and stuff in a tent, sandbagged it. Well, we had him spend the night up there in that tent. I said we, the first sergeant, assigned him to spend the night up there, and of course there's guard posts around close to him, these 3 men on a post. And so he had a field telephone. About 300 yards away was the first sergeant's foxhole. And so one night there was a hospital corps, Japanese hospital corps, came out of Mount Suribachi to take exercise. It was moonlit night. And so he called the first sergeant about 1 o'clock when some of the guards had come to him. And thought they were going to be overrun. And so he called the first sergeant on the field telephone about 1 o'clock, and Sergeant Roger Fuchs was from Louisville, Kentucky. Had been a bookie at Churchill Downs up there. I talked to a mile a minute, but he talked Kentuckyese, and this boy talked Bostonese, you know. And he said, send some more guards up here. And first sergeant said, what did you say? And he said, send some more guards up here. And he said, you want guards or guards? And he said, hell, send them both. Yeah. But what it was a hospital corps. They were not hostile. Well, later on, and a colonel that wrote a history, and it's on the internet, of the 302nd Fighter Control Squadron. There's about 40-some pages of it. I've got a copy of it along with me. But he described that hospital corps coming out and surrendering in detail. And they came out and handed a note. Because they'd used prisoners of war to talk to them. They came out and said, we're nonviolent. We'll never fight against you. Had Red Cross bands, clean uniforms, and the whole bit. Then I remember one morning waking up and getting out of the foxholes, and up a little ways from us was some barbed wire, and there's probably about 75 or 100 Japanese were there, and they were taking exercises, looking toward and bowing toward the sun. And that was toward where we were bivouacked in our foxholes. And I remember looking at those, wondering who they were. And I guess before the day was out, they were gone. I don't know, they put them aboard ship or whatever they did with them. And one of the things that they did that I saw, and I've got some pictures of a typical battle scene, what you'd see after a battle scene, some of it. And I did not take these pictures. But in my own mind, I told you the one about the flamethrower and about the 2 that was killed in the area. They were probably looking for water or something to eat. There were about maybe 20 or 25 that were dug up by the bulldozers that leveled off the area where we had been eating K rations during the time we were in the foxholes. And later we ate C rations, I believe, before we got out of which is much better, out of the foxholes. But we had some tables. They'd just put them on posts and made a frame where we could lay our stuff and set a cup of coffee, and we just stood there. So it took several of those. But anyway, right under that area, they had dug up about 20 or 25 bodies, and I saw them doing that. And I saw one, they hooked him under the chin. You see the bulldozer blade hooked him, and he was so far along that it pulled his backbone and the whole thing out. And you've never, ever in your life smelled such a stench as the human bodies that was that far along. Now we had 2 cemeteries there, 3 actually, the 5th Marine Division Cemetery, one spot, and then adjacent to each other was the 3rd and 4th Marine Division cemeteries. A total of about 6,800 in those 3 cemeteries. But the Japanese, and I do have some pictures of that, where they were taking them and they used details to pick those bodies up in body bags and whatever, put them on trucks, or those amphibious tanks, and hauled them to the site, and just dug a big trench and buried them in mass graves. And I don't know if the Japanese ever tried to identify or whether our people ever tried to identify them. I doubt that they did. I don't know whether they did or not. But I told our people, young people in the elementary school, I said, I'm going to tell you like what I saw. I said, most of us, the beginning of life, that we were wrapped in some sort of a blanket. And I said, at the end of life, I saw a pretty good number of 3rd Marine Division soldiers that were wrapped in a blanket at the end of life. They took a bulldozer with about a 7 or 8 foot blade and dug about 6 feet deep. The last 18 inches or so was dug by hand. They surveyed it, and they laid them in the blanket, and they marked their graves with the crosses and the Jewish Star of David. And now there's many more markings that they can use if they want to, because we have such a variety of people in our country and served in our military these days. And it just amazes me that I look back and see some of the changes. That's one of them that's taken place in our history, because only those 2 major markings, and there's only 3 identifications that made you. When your dog tag is, you're identified as Protestant, Catholic, or Jewish. And how far have we come in that? And I don't really know the identifications now, because we've got people from all over the world that served in our military. But I tried to tell the kids exactly how it was. And this is in a book, Flags of Our Fathers. It's a story about James Bradley's son, one of the 5 flag raisers. And I saw this. In fact, I've got a little picture of this in 5th Marine Division Cemetery of some of the engravings that they put. Marines left nothing for anybody else to do. They took care of all that kind of thing before they left. They had the flagpole up. They had the white gravel rock in on the walkways. They had the picket fence. Everything is up. And there were stones in there, and some of those, you can read some that I've got in magnifying glasses to my buddy and got a date maybe or something other like that. But in that cemetery, 5th Marine Division Cemetery, is one stone that I told the 8th graders at Spring City Elementary School. And I said, even though I was in the Air Corps, Army Air Corps, I salute the United States Marine Corps. And I want to bring you a message from the 5th Marine Division Cemetery in 1945 on Iwo Jima. And on one of these engravings, these words said, when you go home, tell them for us and say, for their tomorrow we gave our today. Some of them picked up on that. I got blue Kuzel letters from these kids. Some of them picked up on it, picked up on my choice as a pilot, all the way down to communications. I didn't get any of those. And when I told them, I finally got my choice. I married the girl that I wrote to all the time that I was over there. When I got back home, I went to school under the GI Bill, and I'll always be grateful to my country for providing that. I went to Cumberland College in Williamsburg, Kentucky as a 2-year college. Graduated from there in 1948. Graduated from the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, degree in electrical engineering. In 1950, wife and I have 3 children. The 2 boys graduated from the University of Tennessee, one in electrical engineering, the other in nuclear engineering. The older one is retired, contracting some. The younger one is still working nuclear engineer at Washbar Nuclear Plant. Our daughter with Tennessee Tech University, graduated from there, and she's teaching in the elementary school at math at Murfreesboro. The wife was a teacher. She went to Hiwassee College. So our son-in-law is also an electrical engineer. He works for the Murfreesboro Electric in Murfreesboro. So we're a family of engineers. We have a grandson that is working for the space industry in Huntsville. I'm not sure he isn't working on guidance and this sort of thing, and probably he's got a lot of things to do right now. In fact, I know his wife is also working there, and she, you may see some things soon in the Middle East that she's had something to do with, because they're working on that sort of thing. But we've lived a long and useful life. We'll always be thankful. We're thankful to our country. I've been asked to speak to some disturbed children. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, that have a problem with honoring our flag, problem with pledging allegiance to the flag. I hope I get that opportunity and just tell them what it is like. I think you have to tell them what it is like. They can take it. They can understand it. I don't know what I would say to them about some questions they could ask me, what's going on right now. But I think that we're trying our best to prevent war, but I think it may inevitably happen. I am disturbed by it. And I asked in our Sunday school class just Sunday, it says you shall hear wars and rumors of wars, but be ye not troubled, for the end is not yet. How in the world, I ask, can we not be troubled? Because there are people we know. Just up the street from where we were sitting Sunday morning in Spring City United Methodist Church, a boy grew up, and we moved to Spring City in 1952. And he was playing football out in the yard out there. We could see him out 2 blocks from us. And we'd go by and made the turn to go to town right at his corner. He went to Spring City High School, schools in Spring City High School. He played football for Western University. And he went into the military. He became general, Brigadier General Herbert Wassam. And I said to them sometime back when the terror thing, this Sunday school class, I said, terror started right up the street. He was with President Zia of Pakistan, and a terrorist blew up the airplane. He had been here and spoke to the kids at Spring City School not long before that. In fact, he had been to memorial service, his mother right here in this church, just a few days before he was blown up in that airplane. I said, we had terror firsthand just up the street. But since it was not in our family, that's one of the problems in Vietnam. 500,000. Give them each a sister and a brother and a mother and dad. That's 4 times 500,000, which is 2 million plus 2.5 million. Outside of that, I'm not sure how much the rest of us cared, how much concern we had. And there's a reason it didn't pull any weight. Not so far as those people. Like Bob Hope said, I come here to tell you that our country's behind you 50%. And Bob Hope came to Iwo Jima. Joey Brown come there. Jack Benny come there. Dick Juergens come there. We had entertainment. We had a hospital there, 232nd General Hospital. I spent some time there with a kidney stone. But my experience there was seeing it from a different. I didn't fire a shot. I had some except for in celebration. My experience was seeing those names I had never heard of except in about the 4th grade through the 6th grade something geography in elementary school that we studied about Japan. I remember that Tokyo was the capital, and I remember that that the women bound their feet for some reason or other. They didn't want their feet to get big. I don't know for what reason. I can't remember now. But that's about the little thing I remembered about the Japanese, and we were just barely introduced to various countries. And I see these names like Kobe and Atsugi, Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and Honshu, Hokkaido, all of those names on these orders that we were printing. Didn't have time to read all of this stuff, but here I see these and see it from a different standpoint, and see it, and that everything was documented, and is doing their best to get the figures right, doing their best. But even the best you do, you can make some mistakes. And somebody had to do those things. Somebody had to operate that mimeograph machine. Somebody had to be there while the others carried the guns. We were just barely capable, maybe not even capable of defending ourselves if that had to be. Marines were on both sides of us, all around us. And I want to thank them for some blankets that they left behind, because I had a little more softer place to sleep. Then at Pittsburgh, I got to tell these wives, and my wife was there too. And I said, I want to thank you. Thank you, wives. Some of you are probably just girlfriends then. I want to thank you for your letters that you wrote. You should have seen us at mail call. And I said to the 302nd Fighter Control Squadron, thank you for keeping the Bettys and Zekes and the Zeros and all those things off of our backs while we slept, and you were on watch on the mountaintop, Sir, about you, and wherever else you had those transmitters, radar and stuff set up. And one of the things that happened with the 302nd, they directed a young naval flyer to a place where he could be picked up and could be rescued. He went up to Washington, got a job in the White House later on, President George Bush. He was directed to the place of rescue by the 302nd Fighter Control Squadron. We had hoped to have George Bush and Colonel Paul Tibbets both at one of our reunions, but that was not to be, because they had interactions with both of them. Colonel Paul, one of our controllers, said at Pittsburgh, he said, do you remember, any of you controllers remember having conversation with Enola Gay as it went over Iwo Jima? And they could not remember, and he said, I know I did. I know I had a request from the Enola Gay to land, and he very well could have, because they were from the 509th Composite Squadron from Tinian. They were minding their own business, flying up there one plane at a time, pulling up, practicing pulling up, all that sort of thing. They were to land that dude at Iwo Jima in case they had to be. So on the day before, on the 5th of August, 1945, there's 60 B-29s on their way out, landed at Iwo Jima. Some of those had to be from the 509th, because this guy said, he said, I remember the words that were used. He said, VIPs aboard. And I called him later and I said, I think the VIPs aboard was not the bomb we're talking about. I think it was the VIPs from the 509th that was coming down to transfer that thing in case they weren't going to let our air service groups transfer that boot if it had to be transferred to Iwo Jima. And some of that 60 planes was part of their group, because they had 15, I think, designated for them to drop that bomb on the 60. It almost got out, because the rumor from the flight line was that they were loaded with British 11-ton blockbuster bombs, and they were going on a special mission. That got out on Sunday afternoon from the flight line. How we doing?
What you have there?
This is the uniform that I wore home, and was come out of the service on the 23rd of February in 1945, Camp Atterbury, Indiana. There's a 7th Air Force patch you could wear. This is a sergeant stripes. This is the one bar for each 6 months of service. And this is the 20th Air Force patch that we could wear, because we was attached with the 7th Air Force attached to the 20th Air Force, Iwo Jima.